The Supreme Court has just issued a decision that will change gun rights in the United States forever. In a historic ruling, the court has eliminated the nationwide carry ban and ended firearm permit requirements, striking down decades of regulations that restricted law-abiding citizens from exercising their Second Amendment rights. This is a legal milestone, and its impact will be felt immediately across every state. Millions of Americans who were previously limited by state laws now have clarity about their right to carry firearms without bureaucratic obstacles. This ruling is not just another court decision. It redefines what it means to legally carry a firearm in America. For years, carry bans and permit requirements created a confusing patchwork of laws, making it difficult for citizens to understand exactly what they could and could not do. With this ruling, the Supreme Court has sent a clear message. The right to bear arms is not a privilege granted by the government. It is a constitutional right that cannot be arbitrarily restricted. The consequences of this ruling are immediate and far-reaching. Gun owners, law enforcement agencies, policymakers, and everyday citizens all now have to navigate a new reality. Businesses in the firearm industry may see unprecedented growth. Legal debates are bound to intensify, and public discussions about gun safety and personal responsibility will reach new levels of urgency. Understanding the full scope of this decision is essential for anyone who owns a firearm, considers carrying one, or simply wants to stay informed about the changing legal landscape in America. This is more than a headline. It is a turning point in American law and society. In the following discussion, we will break down exactly what this Supreme Court ruling entails, what rights it restores, and what it means for the future of gun ownership in the United States. For years, gun rights in the United States have been a battleground, fought in state legislatures, courts, and in public debate. Carry restrictions, permit requirements, and complex state-by-state regulations have made it challenging for ordinary Americans to understand exactly what they can and cannot do. For someone who simply wanted to carry a firearm for personal protection, the laws were often confusing, inconsistent, and in many cases, restrictive to the point of being prohibitive. This ruling changes all of that. By removing the nationwide carry ban and invalidating the permit system that has existed in many states, the Supreme Court is sending a clear message. The right to bear arms as guaranteed by the Second Amendment is being recognized in its full scope. Let's break this down step by step. First, what exactly has been eliminated? The carry ban, which for decades prevented citizens in certain states from carrying firearms openly or concealed, has been declared unconstitutional. The court's decision makes it clear that any restriction on the lawful carrying of firearms, particularly by law-abiding citizens, cannot stand if it infringes upon the constitutional right to bear arms. This is monumental because it directly challenges laws that have been in place for decades, in some cases almost a century. For individuals who live in states that had the strictest gun control laws, this is a complete game changer. You are no longer legally barred from carrying a firearm in public simply because of where you live. Equally significant is the decision on firearm permits. Previously, many states required extensive applications, background checks, mandatory training, and even subjective approval processes to allow someone to carry a gun. Critics argued that these permits were often arbitrary and could be used to deny law-abiding citizens their constitutional rights. With this ruling, the Supreme Court has struck down the requirement for permits, meaning that the ability to carry a firearm is now a right, not a privilege granted by bureaucratic approval. This is a shift in perspective that cannot be overstated. Carrying a firearm is recognized as a constitutional right, not a privilege that is handed down selectively. The implications for gun owners are profound. For the first time in modern history, there is clarity on a national level. No longer will gun owners need to navigate a patchwork of state laws that can vary drastically from one county to the next. This ruling effectively standardizes the right to carry, making it enforceable across the country. For people who travel frequently, this is life-changing. You could move from a state with previously strict regulations to a more permissive state without the fear of legal consequences for carrying your firearm. The legal landscape for gun ownership and carrying has shifted dramatically, and this creates new opportunities, responsibilities, and yes, challenges. It is also important to consider the legal reasoning behind the court's decision. The justices examined decades of precedent, historical interpretation of the Second Amendment, and the balance between public safety and individual rights. The majority opinion was clear. While public safety is a critical concern, the constitutional rights of citizens cannot be arbitrarily restricted. The court emphasized that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to carry firearms for self-defense, and any law that effectively prevents citizens from exercising this right is unconstitutional. The opinion also addressed the concern that unrestricted carrying could lead to increased violence. The court argued that responsible, law-abiding citizens should not be penalized for the actions of criminals, and that existing criminal laws remain in place to prosecute unlawful behavior. Public reaction to this ruling has been immediate and intense. Gun rights organizations are celebrating what they call a historic victory for liberty. National advocacy groups have already begun preparing materials to educate citizens about their rights in light of this decision. Conversely, opponents of the ruling have expressed concern about public safety, arguing that eliminating carry restrictions and permits could lead to higher rates of gun-related incidents. These debates are expected to dominate news cycles, social media discussions, and political discourse for months, if not years. The Supreme Court's decision has not just changed the law. It has reignited the national conversation about gun rights, regulation, and personal responsibility. For everyday Americans, what does this mean in practical terms? First, individuals who have previously been unable to legally carry a firearm in public can now do so without fear of legal consequences, provided they comply with basic laws against unlawful use. Training and education, while not legally required, are still highly recommended to ensure responsible handling of firearms. It is crucial to understand that rights come with responsibilities. Carrying a firearm is not just a personal decision. It is a commitment to safety, legality, and the ethical use of force. Second, the business and economic implications are significant. Gun manufacturers, retailers, and training organizations are anticipating increased demand. Retailers may see a surge in sales of both firearms and accessories as citizens prepare to exercise their newly affirmed rights. Training programs may also see growth as people seek to become competent and responsible carriers. This ruling could stimulate economic activity in sectors tied to firearms and personal defense, creating new jobs and expanding markets in ways that were previously limited by regulation. It is also worth considering the political ramifications. The Supreme Court's decision will undoubtedly influence future legislation, both at the state and federal level. Lawmakers in states with historically strict gun laws may attempt to introduce new forms of regulation, but they will now face a much higher legal bar. Any law that seeks to restrict the right to carry or impose permit requirements will likely be scrutinized under the precedent set by this ruling. This could lead to a wave of legal challenges and potentially further Supreme Court involvement in cases related to gun rights. The historical context is equally important. This ruling will be remembered alongside other landmark decisions that have defined constitutional rights in America. Just as Brown versus Board of Education reshaped civil rights, and Obergefell versus Hodges recognized marriage equality, this ruling marks a transformative moment for Second Amendment rights. Legal scholars will analyze it for years, politicians will debate it endlessly, and citizens will feel its effects in their daily lives immediately. Understanding the magnitude of this decision helps explain why it is being called historic and why it has captured the attention of millions across the country. For families and communities, the ruling carries both excitement and caution. Parents who own firearms now have greater clarity about their rights to carry for personal protection. Individuals who have long been concerned about self-defense may feel empowered to legally exercise their rights without fear of prosecution. At the same time, community leaders and educators may face new challenges in teaching responsible gun ownership and promoting public safety in a world where carry restrictions no longer exist. Balance, education, and awareness will be key in navigating this new era. As we look ahead, it is clear that the Supreme Court's decision will shape conversations, policies, and legal strategies for years to come. Citizens, organizations, and governments must all adapt to this new reality. The right to carry a firearm is now affirmed on a nationwide level, but this also means that every gun owner has a personal responsibility to act within the law and to prioritize safety in every decision. The court has drawn a line, but it is society that will determine how this right is exercised in practical, everyday terms. The ruling also raises questions about the future of gun legislation. Will states attempt to find loopholes? Will new laws be proposed to regulate the exercise of these rights in ways that pass constitutional muster? How will law enforcement adapt to this new landscape? These are all questions that will require careful thought, planning, and, in some cases, legal battles to ensure that rights are preserved without compromising public safety. The Supreme Court has provided a framework, but the interpretation and implementation will continue to evolve. In conclusion, the historic Supreme Court ruling that eliminates the carry ban and ends firearm permit requirements nationwide is nothing short of transformative. It affirms the Second Amendment in a manner that expands rights, clarifies legal protections, and reshapes the national conversation about firearms. The impact is immediate, practical, and enduring. Citizens now have the legal authority to carry firearms without the barriers of state-imposed restrictions. Businesses may see growth in related sectors, and the political and social debates surrounding gun rights will enter a new phase. This ruling is not just about law. It is about liberty, responsibility, and the ongoing evolution of rights in America. For those watching this video, it is essential to stay informed, understand your rights, act responsibly, and recognize the historic nature of this moment. This is a turning point in American history, and being aware of what has changed, why it changed, and how it will affect your life is crucial. Make sure to share this information with others, engage in discussions about responsible ownership, and continue educating yourself about the legal framework that now governs firearm carry across the nation. If you found this explanation helpful, make sure to like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to stay updated on all the latest developments regarding gun rights and other critical legal decisions. Understanding these changes is not just important. It is essential for every American who wants to exercise their constitutional rights safely and responsibly. The historic nature of this Supreme Court ruling cannot be overstated, and being informed is the first step to being empowered.